So the U.S. government is suing Apple for being a monopoly. Let's talk about it. How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland announcing an antitrust lawsuit against Apple because they say, meaning the U.S. government, they say that Apple behaves as a monopoly. Now, I'm kind of torn on the issue of the government getting involved with corporations because at a certain point, are we a free society? Do we have communism? What's going on? Are we going to have a Merrick Garland or somebody else? Maybe, hey, you know what? Since a lot of these companies operate in China, you could put Eric Swalwell on there and put Fang Fang on there. They can be on the board and they can direct the way things go in the company rather than the company itself. So on one side of the argument, one side of the coin, I'm against the federales coming in and trying to dictate what private businesses do. At the same time, I'm not going to say they're wrong as far as how Apple operates. They're a walled garden. This is part of the reason why I really try to protest Apple whenever I can. Because, okay, you have a MacBook. There's certain proprietary things on there. The iMac, one of the main things that got me off of the Apple wave, off the Apple bandwagon, is the newer iMacs, the all-in-one desktop computers. Back in the day, you could at least change the RAM in it, your memory in it. You could just, it was a little door on the bottom of the computer. You pop that door open, change out the RAM, and you're good to go. But now, or the last time I checked, you got the RAM soldered onto the board, and don't try to like get some, like debride it. You're going to ruin your whole computer. You want to repair it yourself? Good luck with that. You got to go to the Apple store. You want to be an independent repair shop. Shout out to my man Grossman on YouTube. You want to have an independent repair store where you might get hit with a lawsuit. There's all kind of things going on. So I think that there is an argument to be made about Apple having some monopolistic, that's a word, tendencies. But at the same time, should it be up to the federales to get in the way of that? I'm not really sure. Now, there's a video. I'm not sure where this is from. I think this is from where? This is from CNET. Let's check out what CNET says and see what they have to say as far as explanation. And of course, if you want to see this video in full without my commentary, link as always will be in the description. If you're on IG, visit a link in the bio, go to the corresponding article on the website. But without further ado, let's go ahead and roll it.
Department of Justice is suing Apple over what it calls an iPhone monopoly, and the government wants Apple to change the way Apple products are designed to work. The case revolves around the Apple ecosystem and this idea of the walled garden, where
it's most certainly a walled garden. I've said that. I've used that specific term over and over again when describing Apple and Apple products, which is part of the reason why I'm PC all the way. I can't do with the Apple system.
users can feel locked into staying with an iPhone when certain Apple services only work with Apple products, or how the Apple Watch only works with the iPhone, or how it can be difficult or expensive for users and app makers to leave the iPhone to use another app store. The lawsuit even calls out how Tap to Pay on the iPhone is also locked down to the Apple Wallet.
Now, I'm going to say certain things. Some of these products are good. I'm going to be all the way transparent because I like to be honest with people. Listen, I have an Apple Watch and I have an iPhone. I got bullied into getting the iPhone back in 2018 because I still had a BlackBerry at that time with a full keyboard. But let's not bring up old stuff, so I digress. The point is that I have some Apple products, although I don't have any Apple computers. I have laptop, desktop. I don't have any Apple actual computers. But the tap to pay function is amazing. It's great. I would use that at a gas pump. I would use that anywhere. You got a certain level of security, certain level of safety that's there. So for that purpose, Apple is very good. And of course, the end-to-end encryption, FaceTime is encrypted. A lot of things are good. They do some things very well. However, you can get into that walled garden situation. And I think a lot of times you pay a walled garden tax. They have these products priced astronomically high. And in order for you to keep in that walled garden, you got to pay the high price. But let's keep on going.
In the 88-page lawsuit, prosecutors say Apple deployed what it called a playbook to keep the iPhone on top with its app store that would, quote, extract higher fees, thwart innovation, and offer a less secure or degraded user experience, and throttle competitive alternatives. In a statement, Apple says, "This lawsuit threatens who we are and the principles that set Apple products apart in fiercely competitive markets. If successful, it would hinder our ability to create the kind of technology people expect from Apple, where hardware, software, and services intersect."
I kind of agree with that. I kind of agree. Now, they're talking about the App Store and the way that it works. Well, it's like, hey, if you're a business, wouldn't you kind of want that for yourself? Wouldn't you want your App Store to be competitive and to be something that is going to be dominant? Wouldn't you try to do things to give yourself the advantage over other, Google Play? Wouldn't you want to do things to give yourself a competitive edge above everybody else?
Apple goes on to say that this lawsuit would set a dangerous precedent, quote, empowering government to take a heavy hand in designing people's technology.
I agree. And that's where I kind of differ from what the government says. The government has some points, but the question is, are these points illegal? Really? They may be inconvenient, or I guess you would say they could be some kind of way unpleasant to some people in the user experience. Some people, not all, because there's quite a few Apple guys that love Apple, that swear by Apple. I would say the majority of the U.S. Once you leave the U.S., it's a different story, but I digress.
The New York Times reports that Apple plans to file a motion to dismiss the case in the next 6 months.
So let's read this right here. This is from New York Times. It says, U.S. sues Apple, accusing it of maintaining an iPhone monopoly. The lawsuit caps years of regulatory scrutiny of Apple's wildly popular suite of devices and services, which have fueled its growth into a nearly $3 trillion public company. Big money, big money. And with big money going to come big haters.
60 days, and Apple will emphasize that it is legal to adopt policies or designs that competitors may not like if it makes using the iPhone a better experience. This may become a landmark case, and the legal battle could stretch out for years. It could be similar to when the Department of Justice sued Microsoft in 1998, accusing Microsoft of monopolizing Internet Explorer for Windows, and it resulted in Microsoft changing its practice. But as for this case against Apple, the U.S. government has joined forces with 15 states and the District of Columbia to lay out a number of examples of Apple hindering competition, and it sweeps across several of Apple's products.
Okay, so let's see what they're going to say about that.
The lawsuit starts with a tale of an unnamed Apple executive who went straight to Steve Jobs in 2010 to complain about the way an ad showed a woman switching from her iPhone to an Android to use her Kindle e-reader. Prosecutors took a sharp jab at Jobs himself, saying that he was, quote, clear in his response. Apple would force developers to use its payment system to lock in both developers and users.
RIP to Steve Jobs. RIP to the big homie, the triple OG Steve Jobs.
The App Store is a big focus. It says Apple is imposing restrictions, fees, and taxes on how apps are created and distributed.
The App Store is really a big problem. That's been the issue with other companies, not necessarily the federales, the U.S. government. I think there was a thing with Epic Games, and if I'm not mistaken, these are the guys behind Fortnite. If I'm wrong, you'll let me know. But that was a big battle. For a while, I think Fortnite was off of the Apple Store, whatever their store name is, and it might have been also Google Play. But that was a big issue because of the fees and things of this nature. It was a whole big drama, fiasco, kerfuffle, whatever you want to call it.
Distributed. The lawsuit points to how Apple blocks in-app payment methods. And another issue is around cloud streaming apps, claiming Apple prevented developers from offering cloud gaming apps that would reduce dependence on the iPhone. There's another focus around text messaging and how iMessage is made to be easier to use than other third-party messaging apps. And yes, the green versus blue bubble debate is part of this. The lawsuit...
Oh, the green bubbles, man. Like, it's serious. Like, if you text somebody who has an iPhone in the U.S. now, if you're not living in the U.S., this is going to be kind of foreign. If you text somebody who has an iPhone and you have an Android and your bubbles come up as green, like, they might think you're a scammer or you're trying to do something you shouldn't be doing, you're using the fake number, all kind of stuff. Because if you have an iPhone and you text another iPhone, it'll be a blue bubble. If you're not using the iPhone, it'll come up as green.
Claims iMessage undermines the quality and functionality of rival smartphones. when an iPhone user chats with someone on Android, it shows their chat bubble is green. And that means the person's conversation cannot be encrypted, their videos shared are pixelated and grainy, and the users in those convos can't edit messages or see typing indicators. And
I didn't know that part about the lack of encryption from an iPhone to from an Android to an iPhone. I didn't know that. It's very interesting. But I wouldn't trust SMS anyway, but that's a different story.
Signals to a family that if they don't have an iPhone, well, the experience is worse. And the DOJ's argument is that Apple could change that.
If you don't have an iPhone, you're poor. That's the message. You brokey texting from your cheap $1,500 Samsung Galaxy S28. You brokey. Get money.
Lawsuit points to Apple executives that said moving iMessages to Android would hurt Apple. And CEO Tim Cook was also called out. Right when Apple launched the iPhone 14, Cook was on stage at Vox Media's Code 2022 conference. And on stage, he was asked if Apple could fix the iPhone to Android messaging problem so it would be easier to text seamlessly with a parent who has an Android phone. And to that, Cook said, buy your mom an iPhone.
Wow. I like that. Get me my iPhone, man. Look, we ain't going to do all this porting our app over to the Androids. Get money. Stop being poor. How about that?
The lawsuit also goes into the Apple Watch, how it only works with the iPhone and not Android. And if you have another brand of smartwatch, your abilities of what it can do with the iPhone are limited. Certain notifications on the iPhone may not come through on another smartwatch, or a user may not be able to take the same actions like they could with an Apple Watch. There are complaints in this lawsuit about how Apple restricts cross-platform digital wallets, blocking other developers from making a digital wallet that has tap to pay. And the lawsuit also calls out Apple Pay for extracting fees from banks for transactions, saying that Samsung and Google do not charge banks. So what comes from all of this? Prosecutors are asking that a federal judge label Apple an unlawful monopoly and force Apple to stop engaging in anti-competitive practices. That could include forcing Apple to let the Apple Watch work with Android, or letting you tap to pay with an iPhone and use something besides Apple Pay. It could mean Apple would need to allow apps that work across platforms. And in the end, all of this could make it easier for consumers to switch their life over to Android, or mix and match their smart accessories or digital services with ones not made by Apple. And yes, it could be the end of the green and blue iMessage bubbles, or at least end some of the annoyances that happen when an iPhone user texts with an Android user.
All right, so that's that. Very, very interesting. That was a good piece by CNET, by the way. Shout out to them for putting that together. Shout out to the reporter for being able to explain things very well. But as I close, I want to say this. There were a lot of good points raised as far as Apple and how they have the walled garden. This got to work with that, and this got to work with that. One of the main things is the App Store. That's really big because a lot of other companies, not the federales, just companies that have apps is like, hey, man, you guys are doing some crazy stuff on here. Like, can we fix this? So I understand some of the complaints with the feds. I'm not really a fan of them getting involved because the feds have had a run-in with Apple before. Remember, under Tim Cook, they were trying to break through encryption. Okay. Oh, well, look, we got to break encryption because there could be some criminals out here using the iPhone for nefarious purposes. But Tim Apple's like, nah, we can't do that because we promise our users privacy and anonymity and security. And if we allow a loophole into encryption, then it's not encryption. So that's not what we want to do for our customers. So shout out to Tim Apple for standing his ground and not letting the feds get in the way. And I say, don't let them get in the way here. However, there are some things you could tweak just for a better user experience. And it shouldn't have to be a thing that comes from the federales that makes you do it. And I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? What's your take on what's happening with Apple and the lawsuit from the feds? Will it go anywhere? Will it not go anywhere? Should it go somewhere? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments below. You guys know where I'm at. A lot of good points raised there, but I'm not in favor of the federales getting involved with private businesses and their practices as long as it's not straight up illegal. But whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.